You ready? Yep.
All set, thank you.
Medfield TV, we good? We're good. Christine's ready. Mark, Frank.
I'm looking at
Audience,
you.
are you ready? All right, well, welcome to the January 24th Medfield Board of Selectmen's meeting. This meeting will be held in a hybrid format. The Board of Selectmen will attend in person, and members of the public may attend in person. And once again, I think we're having bigger crowds actually showing up here than we've seen in some time, even before the COVID restrictions put us all remote. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by going onto the town website, downloading the Board of Selectmen agenda for tonight, and there's a link at the top of that agenda that you can click on if you would like to join via Zoom. A couple of points. First, this meeting is being recorded and it's being streamed by Medfield TV. So for those people who are in the room, the feedback we've gotten from people who do tune in by Zoom is they prefer to have speakers use the podium because the audio comes over better with that. So if you are a lead speaker on an issue or you're going to be speaking for a while, we'd ask you to please use that if you could. If you're just simply kind of joining in the conversation, you don't want to make a big production out of it, there is a microphone. It is the Bill Massaro honorary microphone, not memorial microphone, as I mentioned last time. And what we'll ask you to do is to use that microphone. It doesn't amplify your voice in the room, so you'll think it's not working. The only reason we have that is to pick up the audio stream to go out through Medfield TV. So it's not just a placebo or anything. It really is a microphone, but it's not for amplifying your voice here in the room. So, welcome to everyone. We're going to get started first by taking a moment of appreciation for our troops serving around the globe in defense of the country. Thank you. Okay, the first item we have on the agenda is a public hearing for Verizon's request for a pole attachment of small cell communications equipment at 154 Granite Street at utility pole number 35/56. Do we have anyone to speak? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you, may I?
Yeah, absolutely, please do.
Mr. Chairman, it's
Yes.
a public hearing, so you want
Yeah, I hereby, if we have enough of these, I've got to get this down. I hereby declare this public hearing open. So,
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Paula Foley. I'm a network real estate consultant with Verizon Wireless. And I did just want to point out on Zoom, there are a couple of other Verizon folks in case you have some questions for them. There's Stan Yusevich, who is with Verizon Government Affairs, and also Abdul Jama, who is the site acquisition specialist for this proposal that we're making tonight. We have submitted a petition for permission to install small cell equipment on utility pole 3556, located in the public right-of-way near 154 Granite Street. This utility pole is jointly owned by Verizon and Eversource. The purpose of the proposed facility is to provide improved wireless service capacity and coverage in this area of Medfield where Verizon's engineers have determined that there is diminished service on the network. This request is virtually identical to Verizon's request last year for a small wireless installation on South Street, which the board approved. The equipment will consist of one small canister antenna mounted on the side of the utility pole at a height of 22 feet with a remote radio unit and an electric meter lower on the side of the pole. The size and unique design of small cells allows Verizon to strategically install small wireless facilities in high-demand locations while mitigating visual impacts. So we respectfully request that the board approves Verizon's petition, and we're happy to take any questions that the board or the public may have.
Eileen, any questions?
Couple of just quick questions. So it's the same equipment that you installed for South Street, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and then, has that been successfully installed?
It has.
And were there any issues with neighbors, with installation, anything unexpected?
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, I drove by it on my way in tonight, and it looks great. It will be the same exact style. It'll be 22 feet above the ground, small antenna, less than 3 feet tall, 14 inches wide.
Did you get feedback from any of the residents that it actually had impact, or,
No,
I guess no complaints is a sign of?
no,
Okay.
no, and we didn't get any comments from residents in response to this proposal either. We did send out the notice
Okay,
and the information.
okay. And then just, it's funny, I wasn't sure if this is the same thing, and then I was looking at the paperwork, and when I saw Holyoke, I'm like, oh, it's the same thing that we saw that we had last time. So I was like, okay, we're good to go.
I have a question just for curiosity's sake. Why do you need to do this? Is there a dead spot over there?
Yes, there is. Verizon's engineers routinely monitor the network. And this is an area in the town of Medfield that has a lot of dropped calls, or it has a lot of usage at the same time. So it's coverage and capacity.
That's good.
What I'd like to do is let the three of us ask questions, and then we'll open it up, so I won't cut you off before we close. Okay. Good, Pete?
So I'm gathering that we have some neighbors present, so did you notify all the neighbors?
Yes, we did.
Written notice, mailed
Yes, we
notice?
did. I have a notice affidavit I can submit if you'd like to add that to the record.
Sure, thank you. And then the second thing, you mentioned that the pole is jointly owned by Eversource and Verizon. I thought all the poles in town were just owned by one utility.
No, the majority of poles are jointly owned in town.
All right.
And we have worked cooperatively with Eversource, and we do have their permission to install this equipment.
Yeah, I saw that. And then my last question has to do with the South Street installation. That one's up and running now.
It's up. It hasn't been in service yet.
Oh, it's not operating.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to be in service on early March is the most current date
So
for
there
that
was
one.
someone at the bottom of
Pilgrim.
Indian Hill Road
Mm-hmm.
who had very poor connectivity.
Okay.
And so that, should that person expect better connectivity? Or is that too far away
No,
from?
it might be too far away. I mean, my recollection of where Indian Hill Road is in comparison with I
It's
think it's
right by the Stop
337
River.
South Street. It might be a little bit far, but it's possible. Certainly possible.
Yeah, all right, well, I'll check back with him then. That's it, that's my questions.
I had one, I think, observation for purpose of people that are listening. As I recall, when we talked about the last installation, the question came up, what's the range for these? And if I remember right, it was about a quarter mile, 400 yards.
That's correct. It's a quarter mile to a half a mile, but it is dependent on a lot of factors, such as geography, such as tree cover, such as things like that.
Okay. So, and just as a further comment on that, as I recall, the last request, the whole point is to improve the service in a relatively concentrated area. So the likelihood that somebody would be angry about having that happen, it's probably going to be remote, but you give a good answer and you say, well, no feedback at all, because if it's not running,
Well, that's-
then they
yeah,
wouldn't
that-
have had a chance to say, hey, how great this is. So that's good to hear. The only question I had, and it's one of curiosity, it doesn't matter. The cantenna, is this one small, like a smaller, in terms of the width of the cantenna? The other one seemed, in my head, I remembered as being a bigger looking thing than the diagram or the picture you presented
No,
here. It's the same one?
It's the same one. It's
Okay.
35 inches in height and 14 inches in
Okay,
diameter.
it just looked smaller to me. Okay, I just was curious. Okay, those are the only questions I had. I'll now open it up to the public. The only thing I'd ask you, make sure you have that microphone. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Brianna McAuliffe, owner of 154 Granite Street. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Is there any research on health implications on using one of these right next to my home?
Yes, absolutely. There has been many health studies regarding the safety of these particular units. They are actually very heavily regulated by the Federal Communications Commission, and the particular model that we use is very low power.
Okay.
It emits very low energy, and it's well within the FCC limits. Recently, I'd say as recently as 2019, the FCC looked at its standards again and conducted a comprehensive investigation and confirmed that these particular small cells of this size are well within the limits.
Okay, great. And what about, so when we moved to Medfield, we all had Verizon, and Verizon, we had terrible reception, so we switched to T-Mobile. And now do we have to switch back to Verizon?
I would encourage
I
it.
mean, I know you will, but I'll lose like my free Netflix and Apple TV. So it will be strictly Verizon?
It will be strictly Verizon.
Okay, all right. And when is this gonna, if this gets approved, when would this be installed?
It would be installed during the calendar year. I don't have a specific date when it's going to be installed, but we would hope to get it up and in service before the end of the year.
Okay, all right. I have a big, beautiful dogwood tree, so if you guys could just, like, right there, if you could just
No problem.
just leave it there. All right.
There is no trimming whatsoever anticipated.
Is it, like, really high up on the,
No, it's actually 22 feet. It's not at the top of the pole. It's on the side of the pole. It's
Okay.
about 22 feet above the ground.
okay, great. Thank you so much. I think that's
Is
it.
your dogwood tree in the middle of that island?
It is right in the middle of that island. It's beautiful, like 1 week a year. But
I was fascinated by your driveway having two exits.
yes, it has the little, it's right, that pole is right on the island,
Yeah.
so, yes, thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? I don't think I see anybody online. If anyone online has anything they want to say, raise your hand. Seeing as there are no further comments, I hereby declare this public hearing closed and entertain a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Request approved. Okay, thank you. Thanks for
Thank
coming. Let's see, our first appointment is Chief Garrett to request the appointment of Richard Davis as a special police officer. Welcome, Chief.
Hi, good evening. First, Happy New Year. I don't think I've seen some of you since the New Year's in. Before I get to the appointment of Mr. Davis, I thought we're in a new year. I'd kind of give you a little update about some things that have been going on in our department, kind of just, a little annual. I've already submitted my annual report, so I'll be the spoiler alert and give you a few of the details off of it. As you may have noticed from a recent social media tweet, we were victimized by catalytic converter thieves. I will say we've had a couple in the past, but our community has been pretty fortunate. This was definitely a well-organized and targeted effort. Several businesses over in the West Street area were hit, as well as a breaking and entering into one of the buildings. We are working on that case. I do have some leads, but this was clearly a more organized group that came in. I would like, as long as this is being recorded, to say to our business owners, if they have the ability to bring vehicles in that they might have in their commercial lots, that's the best idea. If not, we would encourage them to park them in well-lit areas. Same thing for multi-unit residential areas. Try and park underneath the lights and away from the wooded tree lines. The pattern is distinct that they try and target cars that are along the edges where they have a quick escape route planned. And for just our general residents, if you have a garage, it would be a good time to bring it in. Again, I don't want people to be alarmed. We have had very, very few of these compared to our neighboring towns, but we're not invisible to the eye for the criminals. So,
Chief, is there a marked preference for regular vehicles or commercial, because they have, I'm assuming bigger trucks have bigger catalytic converters, so if you're looking for the material, but then it might be harder to cut them out, I don't know.
I
Is
know
there-
for a while they were actually going after older model vehicles because they were very easy to cut out. It took very little time, but I think as the criminals got a little better at it, I don't know that it's making a big difference. And truthfully, I would be talking off the hip if I tried to tell you how much material was in a catalytic converter from a Ford 250 to a Honda. So, sorry, don't have that one.
Okay,
So it's not just trucks, I think that's
It's cars, it's trucks, yes. Yep, it's the materials inside the catalytic converter that make it valuable. So, the second thing is, there's no question we had a difficult year, but I think that we have been able to right our ship. I did want to give you some numbers that are in our annual report, but just to show you that the The people that we've brought in and the younger members that we have here are committed to this town, and I think that they've demonstrated this with some grace this last year. So we do a few things that are considered community outreach activities, and those would be building checks. And I'm not talking just about driving by a home. I'm talking about where we make a concerted effort to go to a home or a business, check the doors, actually check for suspicious activity. In the calendar year 2021, our agency did 4,581 official checks. This last calendar year, we increased that to 9,143. So we've doubled our business checks in this past year. Our park, lock, and walk, which is where our officers are encouraged to actually get out of the cruiser, lock the doors, and go and talk to people. That's residents, commercial business owners, visitors, people at the supermarket. It's just to get out and engage. In 2021, the officers performed only 59 of those. In 2022, our officers performed 442. So we've really made an aggressive effort. Our traffic enforcement, which as you know, is one of the #1 complaints in town. We had increased greatly during 2021. We came in with 547 designated posts, so that's not a reflection of car stops. Those are actual times where we say we're going to go sit for 2 hours at a specific location. We increased from 547 in 2021 to 870 designated posts this last year. Our accidents have remained about the same. They're within, I think, 10 or 15 from year to year. So, overnights. Overnights, I have long since said that we enjoy a very quiet and sleepy town, but that does not mean that there is nothing going on. Over the last 6 weeks, my overnight officers have made some tremendous arrests and car stops, and I just thought I would bring a couple of them to your attention. On 2 separate occasions, we had 2 vehicles operating at more than double the speed limit. One of them was on Route 27, one of them was on, if I believe, Route 27, and the other one was actually on Main Street during the overnight hours. We were able to conduct successful motor vehicle stops. One of those stops resulted in the seizure of suspected cocaine, and the other motor vehicle stop resulted in the seizure of a prohibited weapon that was not a firearm. We did perform another motor vehicle stop for a driver that appeared to be erratic and was needing some medical attention for self-harm, and we were able to get him that attention, I think potentially avoiding a tragic circumstance. And lastly, we had most recently the other night, potentially stolen dirt bike that was racing up and down through the center of town after midnight. Our officers were able to follow it and retrieve the dirt bike. They were unable to catch the perpetrator as he fled through the woods. But there are things going on. I'm very pleased to see that we have a group of officers that are out there and engaging the public in activities that, you know, we don't want for our town. So,
If I could just make a comment about that, because I'm aware of various social media comments that have raised concerns about the safety of the town, particularly in light of the reduced staffing that we've had at points in time over this past year. And I think that report in particular about what's being found at night does not represent a condition where Medfield is less safe at night. It actually represents a condition that we are going out and finding things that have been happening all along. So this is something that's going to take some time to completely pull out of the dive we took in staffing, but I would appeal to the people in the town to recognize that there are things that are happening, they're happening in the right direction. It's important for us to get the right people with the right motivation and the right commitment to town on the department, and I'm optimistic if we're already making some progress, particularly at the nighttime, which was where our biggest issues were. I'm optimistic that some of the other safety concerns people have just around staffing levels for different shifts and things like that are going to get dealt with in a positive way.
so I'll speak to that just quickly. You know, as far as I'm concerned, we identified a problem and we addressed it. And our department made adjustments, and our officers that are there made adjustments. And like I said, I feel like we've righted the ship and we're moving in the right direction. As an organization, we look forward, and that's the only direction we look in. So that's where we're going. I am confident that we have a shared value system with our officers and the officers that we're bringing in, that they understand what my philosophy is. They're not resistant to change, and they're looking forward to what the new brings. And I think that's been reflective in what we're seeing from the activity. As far as staffing, I'll give you an update on the MOU briefly. As you know, we switched to 12-hour shifts. 3 of my senior officers opted to stay on the 4 and 2, and I understand change is difficult. Traditionally in policing, it's extremely difficult. But our newer guys did switch to the shifts. We have been able to reduce over the last 11 weeks. I looked at our overtime hours that our officers were working. The same time frame last year, those 11 weeks, we had 1,700 and some odd hours of overtime. We've cut that to 900 hours of overtime in the same time period just by doing the shift adjustment. We have to do some tweaks to it because not everybody came on board with this trial basis. We're still kind of working around 2 schedules. If we had everybody on board, we'd be filling gaps very quickly. The only time that we've had any issues is when we've had officers get sick and we get a very late notice, so hour and a half before a midnight shift, that we have to fill it. So that's really been the only difficulty. Other than that, our overtime numbers are down. Our officers are working less. They're getting more time home with their families, and I think we're seeing the productivity go up as a result. So,
Good.
all right. Any questions before I move to the appointment?
So quick question about, when an appointment is made, does that new hire have a choice for the older schedule, or do they roll into the newer schedule, the 12 hours?
So for the specials, we determine their schedule because they're not members of the union.
Okay.
Every one of the officers that we have hired that has become a union member has been offered the 4 and 2 schedule, and they have all opted to take the 12-hour shifts.
Okay.
So they seem excited about the change, or at least the willingness to try it. The feedback I've gotten is that if everybody were on board, it would be an excellent shift. Guys are enjoying having 2 days on, 2 days off. And yes, do they get stuck on a 16 every once in a while? But clearly the numbers show it's half the time. I mean, we had 55% less overtime than we did the same time last year. And last year we were almost at full staffing. So.
And refresh my memory, I know this is going on for a trial period, so how long is this being offered? Is it 6 months?
It's 6 months, so April 30th, and then we left it as a sunset clause, and the union has the option to approach the town to negotiate an extension.
Oh, good, okay, excellent, thank you.
So, whether they take it or not, I see the benefits of it. I also don't have to work the shift. But I'm incredibly impressed by the officers for even stepping outside of the comfort zones, the ones that did, and saying, hey, we'll try something different. So, I'm pleased with that and very grateful.
That's awesome.
Anything else?
I don't have a question, Chief. I just wanted to tell you how pleased I am that your officers are engaging in a shared vision with you at this point, and so thank you for doing what you're doing at the police department.
No, thank you. Like I said, I'm very, very proud of the people we have right now, and we've been very fortunate to get some great guys over the last year and a half and 2 years, and they've complemented our other guys well. So,
Excellent.
which brings me to tonight. As you know, police reform came about, and they made some significant changes to training. One of those changes is that every officer that works in official capacity within the state of Massachusetts has to be academy trained. So previously, we could send officers to a reserve intermittent academy, which is about 300 and some odd hours versus the 820. And they would get an ability to work as a police officer, kind of on an ad hoc basis or daily basis someplace. Some communities did reserve intermittents to supplement their police departments. When police reform came about, they said everybody must have the same training. Now, they did recognize that that was going to impact communities that used reserve officers. So the Training Council and the Post Commission established kind of a bridge academy to say, if you have an officer that's attended this partial academy, we're going to give them their certification to continue to perform their duties, but then they have to attend this bridge academy and complete what would otherwise be the full academy. And we give them about a year to do it. They split it up over 3 years, so we have kind of A through whatever, A through H, I think, was the first one. H through P is the second one. So with Officer McKenna, what I said is, instead of seeing this as an obstacle, let's see it as an opportunity. So I can bring an officer in who is civil service, who we can transfer his civil service, who is trained, has the hours to work, but just simply needs to take a few more classes. I will tell you that he has worked tirelessly to finish that, and he is expected to finish the entire Bridge Academy in the next 2 weeks. So, as a testament to him, he did hundreds of hours. We expect to have his exemption from the bridge within that time, and then he is considered a fully trained, full-time police officer. So the candidate I'm talking about today is also on our civil service list. He signed with us. He is he's actually within our first 6 to sign with us. He has already attended the Bridge Academy and completed it, but he doesn't have the 2,400 hours of street work that you have to get the exemption. So he does have time to get that. So I tried to think about, again, not an obstacle, an opportunity. I'll tell you, Mr. Davis worked as an auxiliary officer for Newton, as a special officer for Hull, and was working at Mass Bay Community College as a campus police officer. So what I said is, we offered him a part-time position doing our dispatching. We cross-train all of our officers anyway, so this is a training that I would be paying for to bring somebody on. And what I'm asking of you tonight is to appoint him as a special. As a special, he is able to work for us in a police officer capacity and continue to grow the required 2,400 hours. Once he has the 2,400 hours, we're able to request his exemption, and he will be considered a full-time graduate. This is so huge for us with Jake and Rich to be able to do this, because I don't have to send a body away for 6 months where I'm paying somebody to backfill, paying them for the academy, and then hoping they don't get injured in the process. That's what we're asking for tonight. I will tell you that Mr. Davis has roughly 1,900 hours, so he's not that far off his mark anyway, and is eager to, work as many hours as he can to get to that threshold.
So the 500 hours he needs to get to the 2,400 would, basically, we have the ability to get him that 500 hours. He's not doing some other job on the side, or?
Correct.
Okay.
So that was kind of my thinking is, why have him stay at Mass Bay Community College as a campus police officer, working their shifts and getting his hours, when we can ask him if he wants to come here? And he jumped at the chance.
That's awesome.
Lovely young man, lives in Rentham, younger, but same thing, just eager to get going.
Other questions?
No, I'm excited. I think it's great news.
I appreciate the creativity here and trying to find ways to get the plane back.
We're doing it.
On a level attitude here. You're all here, you came. Any questions, comments from the audience? And I don't-
Clearly, we have the same hairdresser.
No one.
Bill, nothing?
No.
Okay.
No, great
All
job.
right, well,
I would move to appoint Richard Davis as a special police officer.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Lastly,
Motion carries.
we do
Yes.
have one officer scheduled for the police academy to start in April, I believe. It's a Boylston Academy. I have a second one finishing up his testing, and we're going to try and get him to that as well. So that'll be 2 more in queue.
Great.
And I just want to take a moment and thank you for what you did. I don't know if anyone's noticed, there's a sign when you're entering Medfield coming in towards the crosswalk near the construction at the end of Pound Street. I appreciate you putting that sign out, because that crosswalk light was down, and the chief picked up on it, and the button was broken, so so while it's down, having that big sign warning people there's a pedestrian crossing coming, between a citizen reaching out and then the chief following up, I just appreciate you, and I know the citizen appreciates the attention and detail that was given.
Yeah, no, I only wish we had known sooner, to be perfectly honest. The last update I got is that the light is operational. We're going to make some upgrades to it, because I don't think it's very bright considering the location. So I think this is a great chance to kind of say, let's just get it to where we need it to be. We've left the sign out there, even though it's operational, just because I still think it's a little on the touchy side, and I don't want to find ourselves in a position where it goes down again and we don't find out for a few weeks.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
So-
Chief,
Thank you.
while you're here, can I ask you about you have some sort of new tool that allows you to gather speed data a lot better than you did in the past? It's apparently not very obvious, and so that you can get the real data.
Yeah, we
How's
talked.
that working out?
Fantastic. We talked about it a little bit when we talked to the Causeway community. It is a speed tracking device. It is, I'm going to make Verizon, they left. Make them feel bad. It's much smaller, so much more discreet. It's beautiful for us because it is completely discreet. People don't know it's there. There are no wires running across the street, and it gives us data in both direction, everything from vehicle count, vehicle size, whether it's commercial vehicle or passenger vehicle, speeds, time of day that we should be targeting our enforcement. So what it does is it either takes a citizen complaint and verifies it, but helps us to narrow down the time, or it says that the complaint is unfortunately not there and it's a perception issue as opposed to an enforcement issue. For example, South Street, I don't think anybody's going to be shocked between the hours of school coming and going was where we had our highest speed rates.
Yes.
But it gives us everything, vehicle count, like I said, times a day. It's fantastic. Just from a management standpoint, I don't have to put an officer sitting someplace for 4 hours when the data tells me it's only a half an hour that I need in there. So
Yeah, that's
So
great.
you've done Causeway Street, I know from before, you told us that, I think. And
We've done-
You've done South Street, or any other streets that you've used it?
Pleasant, Metacomet, and we're about to put it out on Pine Street. Pine Street isn't so much a speed issue. We do have a complaint about some cyclists. I know it's a big cyclist route.
Yeah.
It is a very narrow road. With the new law that was enacted for the spacing for cyclists, it's going to be something that, we talk about in the future on the safety committee. But in the interim, it's fantastic for me to get that data, so when I go into the meeting, I'm better informed.
I would love to see the Metacomet one, because I got to tell you, I know they fly. It's like they're out of school, they're out of here.
That wasn't special either.
No, it would make sense. That's funny.
So this is a curveball a little bit. You
Sure,
wouldn't have
okay.
seen this one coming, but you just prompted, when you started talking about Metacomet, an issue that came up years ago that was re-raised before this board this past year is Curve Street.
Yes.
Are you just curious whether there's any progress you're doing? Mostly, I just want to make sure it's not off the radar screen.
Want me to answer? We actually have taken, Brittany and I have taken this off the chief's plate.
Okay.
And Brittany is working with some contacts on how to actually do that project.
Okay.
It's a little more involved than we were led to believe to begin. So Brittany, that's on her
Okay,
plate now.
so it wasn't a curveball at you, it was a curveball over here.
It is not, and I actually did reach out to the resident who asked us to look into that recently, just to let them know that it was no longer on the chief's plate, but ours, and we were looking into
Okay.
it. So
Oh, good.
I assume once we get the budget season a little more under control, we'll hit the ground running on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pete, there were some materials that I picked up at the MMA annual meeting on Saturday at the vendor booths that I thought the safety committee might like to have, so I'll pass those along.
Oh,
to
yeah,
you.
thank you very much. Yes, I know we're actually trying to buckle down a date right now. As Christine just mentioned, budget season is always tough to squeeze something in just with all of our schedules, but.
She's being very kind. It's me holding it up, and I promise we will schedule it
Oh,
very
you-
shortly.
That's twice you've fallen on the sword.
Yep.
Wow.
Very guilty.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, keep up the good work.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is David McCready, Craig Rafter, and Dean Harrison to present the proposed development at 441 Main Street of 2 rental homes and the rehabilitation of 6 existing rental homes under the Housing Options Program RFP. That will then culminate in a vote to authorize the chair of the Board of Selectmen to sign the local initiative program letter of support and LIP application, and a vote to sign the memorandum of understanding. So, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Dean Harrison. I'm here tonight to provide you with a presentation of our application. We have met with the town and the Affordable Housing Trust a few times already, and I believe they provided a letter of recommendation and a letter of support. The presentation for this evening is basically on I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible, is that we like to submit a LIP application to the Department of Housing Community Development, DHCD, as working with the town to support the project. The property is located basically next door from here, and we're proposing to do a new addition that will house 2 units, and then rehabilitate the additional 6 units for a total of 8 units. We have gone back and with the Affordable Housing Trust, there was some misunderstanding in the original RFP of how many units would be affordable. But we recently met with them, and it was decided we're going to do 4 affordable units restricted to people who earn 70% of median income or less. You do not have to make the full 70% of the area median income, but that's the ceiling, all right? Currently, they have 6 residents, and we feel that hopefully all 4 out of the 6 will be income eligible, and we'll be able to stay. We're not here to relocate anybody. What we would do is any of the existing tenants who do not meet the qualifications will be allowed to obviously to stay, and then as they move out, those units will be turned over, either for market or affordable, depending on where we stand at the time. So we're asking obviously the Board of Selectmen tonight to support our application, sign the application along with the support letter that we need to submit to DHCD.
I'd make a couple of, again, this is for the audience.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong about anything that I say here. This project actually is receiving $400,000 in support from the town. For those who've been here for a few years, you may recall that when we first started the Affordable Housing Initiative, the town approved $1 million bond. And I think what prompted that, Pete, as I recall, was that we had a project that had come up that a developer could only afford to do it if they had had something like $200,000 more coming from the town. And as a result, they didn't do that. They went out, I think, to rent them. And so when we were looking for some of the early affordable housing projects, we had a good one, except that the finances weren't totally right. We didn't have any way of kind of pushing that over the top. So that that bond has been sitting there partially tapped, but anyway, 400,000 of that is going to this particular project, and I'm betting that that was some of the leverage the town used to get to the 50% affordable versus the 25%, I would guess.
I think that's how it worked out.
But anyway, it's legitimate use of town funds. It's consistent with the idea that in this particular case, we're renovating buildings that are already there and basically bringing them into our subsidized housing inventory to help us get to the 40B requirement.
Yeah.
I had one question. I meant to send this off to the Affordable Housing Trust, and time goes. Do you happen, and you may not know.
Joe's here from the Affordable Housing
Oh,
Trust.
okay, well, that's good. So you're another person. Anybody up
Maybe
here
not.
gets off the hook because there's people in the audience. The only question I had is this will be 8 additional affordable housing units. As I recall, with the 2010 census still in effect, I think we needed 8 more units to meet the 10% of the 2010 census, which will be inadequate once they finally get the 2020 census finalized. But in terms of understanding the significance of this project to the town, I believe, so first question, Joe, is that my understanding correct? And then second question, if you could just briefly comment on, so do we get safe harbor for a year, and then at some point the 2020 census becomes the determinant and we have a new target to shoot for?
So the 8 units.
Oh, I thought you were pointing to the screen. Sorry, John.
That's okay. I'm right here.
Oh, I didn't know.
We were looking to make you a panelist.
That's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you, I didn't know you, sorry.
That's okay. Joe Hunt, 31 Cheney Pond, member of the Affordable Housing Trust. So yes, all 8 rental units with the 441 Main Street will count towards the SHI for the town. I believe based on the 2010 census numbers, that won't completely close the gap to reach the 10%. I believe it puts us like 9.8, 9.85%. There's still a small gap.
Okay.
But we are currently in a kind of a temporary safe harbor, so to speak, right now. And given some of the other projects that are ongoing, coming through in the next couple of years, particularly the state hospital project, that in and of itself would be sufficient to put us into safe harbor. It's just a matter of when those are ultimately counted. But we, to the broader point, we met with the owners and the development team 3 times last year. A number of concerns were discussed. The whole project has been vetted pretty broadly. They had a meeting with neighbors to talk about the location of certain, not only the addition but parking, some other access issues, lighting issues. I think one of the things that Dean mentioned too was the idea of naturally occurring affordable housing that already exists in the project, and that was one of the issues that we talked through. And their idea, the idea that they're not going to displace anybody, the idea that the area median income is a ceiling, it's not a floor. So the idea here is that nobody is getting kicked out as a result of this project, and instead, what the town is getting here is it's getting not only 8 units that count towards its SHI, but it gets 4 units that are going to be deed restricted in perpetuity as affordable at the 70% threshold, which most projects to date have been at the 80% threshold. So this is lower than any other existing property in Medfield currently.
Great, thanks. Joe, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And I think I know there's a representative of the condo association here tonight. I did want to also note that while the trust is supportive of the concept and certainly recommends that the Board of Selectmen support this project, we do of course defer to the Zoning Board of Appeals for that whole process relating to technical issues. So I think, to answer your question earlier, I think that might be ultimately where this comes in at, is not the trust level or particularly the board level, but probably with the zoning board.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to explain the process a little bit to the people in the audience. This is just the next step. Once we get the support of the board to submit our application, this gives us the right to get what is called a site approval. And a site approval is what we receive from Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, and that's basically like the golden ticket into the ZBA. So we still have to get that approval, and then from that approval, we go to the ZBA, and the ZBA will submit a full application, and there's a guidelines, regulations for that, and that's where we go through the details of the plans, the engineer drawings, the architectural drawings, the details, how we're gonna connect to the existing conditions of water, sewer, whatever. So there's plenty of steps. Under the ZBA, they have 120 days to approve or deny our application. So this is only one step. While it's a crucial step, obviously, it's only the beginning of the whole process for us. So.
Mark?
And I likewise understand that there's a representative from the condo association who are butters to the east. And so my only point would be, if there is some issue there, and I don't know what it is or whether there is one, but it would probably be in your interest to work it out before you get to the ZBA.
Yes, we did, when we met, we had a neighborhood meeting. Some of the folks from the association or the condominiums were over. Before I leave, I can give you my phone number, or email, and more than willing to meet with you or whoever to discuss.
That's what I was gonna ask for.
Sure, yeah.
Why don't we do that and keep the lawyers out of it?
Always the best idea. Ooh, I don't mean to say that out loud. So.
Well, in support of that, I actually,
These are the only 2 lawyers, so there was no offense over on this side.
well, in support of that statement about the neighbors being present, I actually attended that meeting, and
Yes, you did.
and I had a chance to meet some of the neighbors, and they asked a lot of questions about the fence and about the driveway and about lighting, and all of the answers were, everyone said, "Yep, this is great. Like, we support it. It's going to look nicer." So in that sense, I can attest to that. I was holding it the whole time for you, and it was a very cordial conversation. So it went well.
Any questions or comments, Eileen?
No, since I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust, I absolutely support this. I met Dean a few times here.
Pete?
I think this is a great idea. I'm fully in support of it, and I think the whole building will look a lot nicer, so that's a win for the tenants that are there, that get their units upgraded, and the town gets the 8 SHI units. So I am an attorney, and so I just noticed in your presentation materials that you have the name of Mr. McCready's attorney incorrect.
Oh.
It should be Cannon instead of Gannon, so if
Okay.
that's going somewhere else, like the DHCD, you might want to correct that.
Okay.
And the only other question that I had was about about Joe, what you said about that we're in some sort of safe harbor. My understanding is that we're not in any safe harbor at all.
Right. It's not an actual safe harbor, which, apologies for the misspeak. Yeah, we're not in a safe harbor.
Yeah, we're about 8 or 9 units shy of where we need to be.
Yeah, I believe when the housing production plan was approved last year, we were 21 units shy. So this will still put us, probably.
Yeah, but I think that was based on the older census, the 2010 census.
Right.
My understanding is we need about another 8 or 9 beyond this. Do you know, Chris? Or-
Right, but they haven't released the
Oh,
updated census data, so we're still following the old census data until
All right.
such time.
Otherwise.
Yes,
A lot of people are.
yeah.
So that's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
And like Pete, I had some administrative points. One is a question. The phone number listed for me is just the basic town phone number, which is fine. But it actually made me say, what happens if somebody wants to call me and they call the town hall? I don't think there's any good way for them to reach me.
No.
So-
Not using that number, no.
So
We can
that
change
so it might be better to use my cell phone number as the number that's only if anybody's trying to get a hold of me, and I'm not trying to run away from them. And then the other point that I'll make, this is strictly administrative, is that your opening comments, Dean, helped me understand why I was finding 25% affordable in some places and 50% affordable in other places. So it is 50% affordable, but because of that, and what I was trying to quick look up is to see what page it is on, I'm using our meeting packet. So if you were to look at our Selectmen's meeting packet, page 43 of that 160-page packet, I believe that one says 25% affordable. Page 21, which is the cover letter from you guys, still says 25% affordable. And page 86, for sure the letter that I'm supposed to sign right now says 25% affordable. So I think we'll have the vote on supporting the project with the understanding it's 50% affordable, and then there's some administrative corrections that need to be made, including the letter that I'm supposed to sign that makes it clear it's 50%, not 25%.
Yes, Brittany had some questions about the signature page as well, so we can have a discussion
Yeah.
tomorrow about that, but yes.
I wasn't
just the
sure if
vote
you
for
were going to
tonight.
prepare your own support letter, or I just provided a draft that I had in the past.
Perfect.
It was well-written, thank you.
Thank you.
So anyway, that's strictly administrative, but there were a couple of cross threads, and if you guys haven't found them, I went through and spotted, I think, all of them. Okay. Any further comments, questions? Motion.
I move to authorize the chair of the Board of Selectmen to sign the local initiative program letter of support and LIP application, and to sign the memorandum of understanding.
Second?
All those in favor? Oops. Wait.
I would say, just to be clear on the record, I put the 50% affordability right in the motion.
As amended. Moved as amended by the town council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
prepared to sign the corrected letter that needs my signature. The letter of support, I believe, just had my name on it.
Yes.
Is the MOU, do the other ones require all three of us? or-
The MOU, I believe, requires all three.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay,
So we'll work that out.
okay,
Yeah, I believe
It
that,
reflects the 50%.
yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure I knew the right inventory for signatures to get this done when everything is corrected, so, okay.
we'll be in touch. Great, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next item is a follow-up discussion of the 2023 town goals. I hope you both saw, what I did once again in this meeting was, prepare for this meeting, is I went back to my notes from last meeting. My intent, at least, was to simply reflect the comments that you made and not further editorialize or change them. I also got a recommended goal from Hilly Passas, which I built in there, so hers, when we get to that sixth section. And Hilly, yes, you are out there. I saw your email to me just as I started this meeting, so I don't know what your last transmission said, so at the appropriate time, we can bring you on to add your comments on what we have here. So you can go fill up your wine glass now, but within a couple of minutes, we may be calling on you here. So let's start. Any questions, comments?
No, did you see Kathy McDonald's ad for goal number 4? For promote
No.
healthy and responsible? No, it's really good. Okay, so she sent an email, I think it was to all of us. Let me double check. I have it, if you don't have it.
I don't have it,
Kathy
but,
sent it, oh, I wonder if it went in your spam.
It's
or
probably in your
junk.
spam.
well, I checked my spam. Oddly enough, Sarah is in my spam on my G Murby 1651 account. You go into my spam on my
Oh,
Lex
you know
Lead
what?
account, but I didn't see
You know what, you know what, I'm
anything.
gonna forward to you right,
Okay.
no, wait a minute. Kathy
Well, if you forward it
McDonald.
to me,
Oh, you're in it, yeah. So Kathy, she has you,
When did she
at
send it?
your, medfield.net. Do you not have medfield.net?
You have not set that up, okay.
There we
Yep.
go. All right, let me forward this to you. It's
You forwarded it to me too, because I never saw that either.
No, because
Much
she
much as
probably
I'd
put
love to
Pete
have
to
a
the.
fourth email inbox.
We're going to have a fourth email.
I'm gonna do this, don't get myself in trouble here doing stuff I'm not supposed to, but this is legit, it's forward to you guys.
All right, thank you. Well, so that was for which goal?
That was for goal 4.
Goal 4, so I'll put down, check Kathy's.
Let me pick up on the fact she sent it to you. You meant the one.
Well, I will add a fourth inbox if I must.
Yeah, and you'll see, she has, she's got 2 goals with objectives, and I think that you'll
Okay.
find them
Good.
very helpful.
Great. As I was updating it this time, I realized that when we get to a point where we think it's sort of final, because these are town goals and not just Board of Selectmen goals, it probably will make sense to deliberately send these goals out, maybe even highlighted by DPW type goal. We have some DPW TSART goals in here. If Kathy may already be out in front of it on her stuff, so.
Okay.
But there probably, we want to deliberately go out to a couple of departments to get their inputs.
Oh, absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, that kind of supports what I was saying last
Right.
week, that there are committees
Yeah.
that can help us with these,
Yep.
so
Yep.
it's a team effort.
What else?
Let me go back to yours over here. So, the only, it was like, this is just a small change. When we get to goal 6, and there's a comment about adopt no mow may for appropriate public spaces. I would say educate and potentially adopt, because I don't know if I didn't know what that even meant. So if we're trying to, that's public spaces, and then encourage adoption for private, well, let's educate on what no mow may is, so.
So right now it says,
Adopt no mow.
we said encourage adoption, so what you're saying is educate
Yeah.
and encourage adoption, okay? Okay,
And I think
what else?
I think, and you can go to Pete, I think I'm good. I was gonna double check. I had a
Okay.
document I'd
Yeah.
opened before.
Pete?
My first one was, the accessory dwelling units.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
see, where are they?
Page 4
Yeah.
of your draft. And I would just put a period after the parentheses that says accessory dwelling units. So read explore the feasibility, attractiveness of allowing ADUs, accessory dwelling units, because I don't think the rest of the sentence actually is correct. They don't always have to be attached to an existing house.
Fair enough. Yes, Sarah, you both got the information that Sarah Raposa sent out on these.
I got it, I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
Are we
Well,
saying
that, no,
this,
that's fine. It's good. I would encourage you to look at it. One of the things that's good in some of the presentations is they actually have, I think it was the presentation, it might have been the link. They actually had sort of some tables that showed what various towns here in the state have established for rules for some of these options. And so it's interesting because there were one of my concerns was that we would effectively be undercutting our bylaws by allowing 2 units that people then could subdivide like they do with multifamily homes and they condoize them. But the way these rules were in these various towns, they did some interesting things around saying, well, you can have an accessory dwelling unit, but that doesn't allow you to have more people on the lot than what the lot is sort of allowed for. So in other words, if you could have 6 people in a house, if you build this dwelling unit, you can't have 10 people on the lot. It was just, I thought it was kind of creative. And there were some other ones that I think that linked the size of the unit to a certain percentage of the size of the original, of the core building. So, you know, you effectively couldn't build 2 equal-sized houses on a lot that's zoned for 1 and call the second one an accessory dwelling unit. So there were some creative ways that towns that are doing this have gone about doing it that at least gives some food for thought. So.
Well, my personal opinion would be that we wouldn't want to allow as accessory dwelling units that are very large, that we would have
But, yeah,
a maximum
right.
size. I don't know whether it's 800, 900, 1,000 square feet, but whatever it is.
Right. So and that's my point, is that some of these tables, there are certain places where certain towns specify the size of the unit. There are other places in the tables, in the information that Sarah sent, where they have parameters that are tied in that the unit can't be more than 15% of the square footage of the base building. So my point wasn't that there was any one right answer there. It's just that I found some creative rules that addressed some of my fears about how this could be abused if it was too open-ended. So obviously other towns have felt the same way, and I just thought there were some interesting possibilities from other towns.
I didn't get a chance to take a look at that, but I'd be curious, do they allow RS, being residential suburban, to do this, or is it mainly in the RU and in the business area?
It would be in the RS and the RT, the bigger zone.
That's what I would hope, I mean, because I look at what's happening in the RU, and those are
It
small,
depends.
very small lots that
It
are already.
depends on what people want. You can write it any way that people want it, but I would think that people would want it in the larger lots, the 20,000 and up square foot lots. I mean, RU already has a system for maximizing the density
Coverage,
that
yeah.
people want, so I don't think we would want to go too much beyond that there.
Okay.
I can't remember Sarah's materials even
I
called
don't
out
think
the
it,
zoning.
yeah,
but
I don't think
it's
it
a
went
valid
that,
point,
it's
but-
not that detailed yet. They're still doing an initial investigation, so I don't think it's that developed yet.
And Joe, just as an aside, one of the things that I've thought for at least 3 or 4 years since I first saw it at our Mass Municipal Association annual meeting, I realized from what Sarah sent that the AHT has been thinking about is this cottage concept. I originally thought that the Medfield Meadows for sale units was going to be a cottage concept. I thought that the Hinckley development on Ice House Road could have been a cottage concept, but it wasn't. And I realized, having watched 2 projects that I thought might have turned into cottage concepts, balloon into 2,000 square foot units, it's like, okay, there must be another way to bring this about. But I'm glad that the AHT is looking at that, because I personally think it's over and above accessory dwelling units. The cottage concept, especially for situations where we're trying to address senior housing, offers a lot of opportunities. So I'm glad you're out in front of this already. I kept thinking we should do it, and every project comes in and it's like, no, this is another 2,000 square foot housing unit. compressed in a smaller piece of property. So I'm glad that the AHT is taking a look at that. I've seen the one that the state used to use on the cover as their model, which is down in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And that one, I've actually physically looked at that, and they actually have a second one down there. And the interesting thing about the one in East Greenwich, where I've been thinking about it for senior housing, which it certainly could be, but my business partner is down there, and he said, and interestingly, all of those units are actually owned by single women who found that as a nice concept because it's a community. But so it's not maybe just senior housing. It's actually maybe got more
And
appeal.
the size of the units is such that a millennial would like that as well. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's a senior, or
Whatever it is, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. I happened to talk to a developer this week, and he had just lost out on a property in Kingston. He said that where he was looking to develop 900 square foot homes, specifically for that sort of market. And I mentioned to him that there might be some land in Medfield that one could do that on, that the town owned, and he was very interested in that idea, so.
So, anyway. Any other comments?
Yep. I think that goal number 5 still doesn't have a heading. I had proposed to maintain town character.
It does. Oh,
Well, not on mine, it's got a black line on
okay,
it.
that's
Should be
what it
green.
should look like,
Oh.
So it's
On
main,
mine, you can't
so
read it.
what it says right now, and incidentally, I went back and looked, because it seemed like that must have been something that went away. And then I went back through all of my records of prior files, and I couldn't find one that got it to me. So I made this one up, and I did it, which I think is in the spirit of this, which is maintain Medfield's town character.
Yeah.
So if you
That's
have any
sort of what I
editorial
said,
comments
yep.
on the words, that's what's there. It's probably because you didn't print it out in color, Pete.
I don't have
So
a color
that's there.
printer, Gus,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, that's quite all right. But
If you'd use better colors, it would help me. More contrast, please.
this was, well, I was doing this with track changes, so actually I wasn't even in control of the color.
Uh,
What else you got?
On the goal 6, I would have hire the sustainability coordinator as a goal under climate action. It's certainly something that's on
Well,
our plan.
and so I disagreed with that. We edited that out and replaced it with Hilly's goal, because hiring a coordinator is not an action, it's a decision that's intended to achieve something that's a goal. We don't have a goal of hiring people. We may need to hire someone to achieve a goal, but we're talking about goals here, not embedding decisions that should be decisions of the town in here. So last time I pushed that out, Hilly came back in with the new goal that well, again, you can't, that goal there is actually new. And that was from Hilly, because she said, okay, if that's how you feel about it, then what we need to do is develop the capability to achieve these goals, and I'm good with that.
Well, so that goal is create internal capacity to support town boards, departments, committees, and residents. That's intended to mean hire a sustainability coordinator?
No, that's intended to create that capability. If
Right.
we get to a point where we decide we need a sustainability coordinator specifically, as opposed to, I think in our last meeting, Christine talked a little bit about this I don't think is done in a vacuum.
Right.
It's going to have to be done in the context of probably of a facilities manager who's looking at developing certain things that need certain capabilities to bring that about in a direction that supports the climate goal. So
So I would have hire sustainability coordinators under the 2023 goals. That's a thing that we're looking to do this coming year.
we're not.
Well, I think,
Well, the
so I
town
think what
is.
was
Chris has
implied
announced
was,
that she wants to do it.
what I think what was implied was that we potentially don't have to hire. We may have a skill set that's here that we could be dedicating somebody. So instead of saying, we're going to burden the town with bringing somebody new in, it's Christine looking at, could we reshuffle some resources? So I think, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Gus, is that to put a hard hire or no hire, and then we fail because we didn't technically hire, but we may reshuffle some resources that says we're now putting the skill set in a bucket that can help us with grants, et cetera, is still, I believe, achieving what the intent is.
Yeah, all right, well, I would have it there, but I'm hearing two voices say no, so.
Which is not to say you hear two voices disagreeing with the words that Hilly gave us around the idea that we
Yeah,
want to
which,
build.
which
Yeah, I like how
perhaps
she wrote
leads
it.
to the same place. But
Yes.
I would make it
Yep.
clear under the 2023 goals that we're looking to hire a sustainability coordinator this coming year.
So we have two of us that aren't willing to do that, make that commitment.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay, what else you got?
That's it.
This is getting closer. I'm thinking that we might, just from a process standpoint, that we may,
Vote on the 6th.
and Hilly, I haven't forgotten you yet. You still get to talk here. But I'm thinking from a process standpoint, we're getting close enough that we do one more update at our next meeting, if the two of you bless the idea of basically declaring that this cake is baked as far as remember, it's a living document, so
Yep,
it's not the Magna Carta, but we get it to a point that we say we think that we have talked about it here in the Board of Selectmen meeting long enough, that we will go with this here with the understanding that town understands this is a living document, so if we run across something that needs to be changed, we can always change it, but we will put this interactive discussion process to bed at our next meeting unless you think we need to keep pedaling the bike uphill. Is that-
No, I think that's fine. The other thing that I guess I would mention, just comment on, is that I had a disagreement about these being called town goals until at our last meeting, we said that we were going to invite groups from the town in to talk about these and give input. So as long as we're doing that, as long as that's part of the plan, then I'm happy to call these town goals, but we need to bring the committees in to.
Well, in the context of our meetings, or, I mean, I would put this out, send it to the committees that we think have roles to play and say, here's the goals, we'd like your inputs, and just process it that way.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, just-
I'd
we
rather
need-
do it
we
that
need their
way.
input.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying.
actually, some of these things, they're the ones that are gonna have to do it, so, not just input, but also commitment to
What was, by
doing
the
their
way,
parts.
what was Kathy McDonald's suggestion?
It was, I have it right here. So Kathy, give me 1 second. So her first one was support and strengthen the opportunities available to the town's young people to help them realize their full potential in life. And then objectives, increase awareness of Medfield outreach missions, services, and how to access help. Continue to provide high-quality services to Medfield residents, including youth. Continue to collaborate with town and school departments and other key community partners to increase awareness and utilization of the outreach services. Create spaces and opportunities for youth to promote mental and emotional wellness, which, as she sent a little note here to all of us, that this is part of their strategic plan. But I think this is to what you were just stating, Pete, that there are committees out there, there are groups out there that are part of what we're trying to do. So
Yep.
her adding, and then she added another one here, increase prevention services in order to build a healthy community, and then she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objectives along with that you'll see in the document.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, to your point, spot on, that hopefully, and Christine, you sit to my left, so you have all the department heads, that they're at least looking at this saying, you know, what the leaders of the town are striving to do, we're in support of it, we're maybe already doing it, or could we put some other suggestions on the table, is I think more or less what you're trying to get at, Pete, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's also some things in here, like Hilly had added the zero waste, which I thought was a good add, but that's gotta be TSARC and DPW, it's in the capital seat for bringing that kind of a thing about, so some of these will be actually ideas or actions that are going toward them. Hilly, I see you're here, and I have not had a chance to read the email that you just sent, so if you wanna give us, I will pay attention to it after the meeting, but if you wanna give us the highlights of what's there.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, and I'm double. And I agree with you that this is shaping up very nicely. I think great progress, and it's looking very good. I did send a copy also to Frank. I don't know if he can pull it up for you. And so looking it over, I came up with the also with an addition to goal 5. You could scroll down. And I highlighted in yellow because I didn't know how to, down there. So this was an area where you support environmental protection efforts and promote the public's responsible use of our natural resources as a focal area. And you had something about the tree inventory and tree planting plan in there, and I added 3 separate items. Do you want me to read them out, or?
I can see them on the screen, Hilly. I think anybody that's viewing this on Medfield TV, I think can see it as well.
So it's highlighted in yellow, right?
The stuff that's highlighted in yellow, which Frank is making even bigger.
So this relates back to what Eileen was saying earlier about the no mow May and increased pollinator habitat creation. And I thought that was fit in there together with the tree inventory and the tree planting. But we could also have it in goal 6. That would really, depend on where you would like to see something like that.
And Hilly, just a quick reaction to the third of the items that you have here. No, you've got it in the right place. Never mind. It's right. I was sitting there. I would put it in with the line that we had about Sarah's work in this area. And it's like, that's where you put it. So we're good.
That's why I put it there.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay.
So that was my suggestion for goal 5. And then if you go
Before we move on, Hilly, any reactions,
Yeah.
Eileen or Pete, or anyone for that matter, but Eileen, Pete, to the suggestions Hilly has? In a quick read, they seem at least pointed in the right direction. I haven't tried to wordsmith them yet, Hilly, but they seem like good ads to me.
Yep, I like them too.
Okay, we like what we see. Keep going.
All right, wonderful. So in 6, you had the first item is sustainability, environmental sustainability and resilience in town. And in talking to other towns lately, what I hear a lot is that they have been putting together their municipal vulnerability plans, which are required by the state. We did ours in 2019. And now they're working on the next step, which, the MVP, like the Tomcap, is a strategic plan. So now they're looking at the next step of how do we implement this and how do we pay for this. And there is a rush to get somebody to help towns figure out how much this is going to cost. I hear that the Mass Extension Service for Energy Services is completely booked up for many months to come, and several towns have secured funding to the order of at least $70,000 to figure out how much money they're going to need to fund the resiliency and adaptation measures. And I would like to point out here that climate adaptation, these are things that are going to happen to the town that we will have to fund somehow. There's going to be storms, there's going to be flooding, there's going to be heat waves where we have to shelter people, all sorts of things that I can't predict right now. But we really have to think about how to assess that risk, how to fund them, and what sort of order of magnitude we're talking about. And so I would really encourage to set a goal for this year to seek funding for a financial and risk analysis of the MVP.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Comments?
I think that's a good idea.
That's fine. Yep, keep going.
All right, so then in terms of climate action, so that's the other side of if the MVP is things we're going to have to somehow deal with in the future, the net zero plan, the Tomcap are things we can do right now. And what I've been telling you beforehand is that we're using each individual project that we come up with, or that sort of comes up in the town schedule with replacement, maintenance costs, whatever. We present that the benefits, the financial aspects of it individually to you and seek approval. But if you would like to have a sort of a larger plan, then we would also need to seek funding for that assessment.
Comments, Eileen?
No, again, I think it's, if we can get the funding, great, to put it towards the cause.
Pete?
Grant funding is always appreciated, so excellent idea.
So Hilly, I have a few comments on this. First off, I think the action is fine, so I'm not pushing back on the action. One observation that I found intriguing at the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting on Friday, which was our opening, that involved actually an in-person talk by Ed Markey and a video presentation by Elizabeth Warren, our two senators. Both of them characterized the Inflation Reduction Act as actually a climate action funding document to the tune of something like $392 billion, which I found intriguing that our two Democratic senators both basically recharacterized the Inflation Reduction Act as basically a climate action funding package, which many people have said it was, but that's the most bluntly and candidly expression that I've heard. I found intriguing. The second point, in Elizabeth Warren's video, she had some foot surgery, and so that's why she was on video. Well, no, there's two things. Number one, and Christine, you might be able to help me with this. The ARPA funding rules have been liberalized so that town, not that we necessarily are in a position to use it of anything at this point, but I believe ARPA funding, there's a more liberal set of rules around how ARPA funding can be used to undertake some of these actions. And I kind of triggered that. Now, we may already have everything committed, so that it maybe doesn't matter, but at least at the federal government level, some of the rules appear to be loosened to make it easier for municipalities or agencies to use that funding for this kind of stuff.
I'd be more than happy to talk to the county about that.
Okay, yes, well, that's my point. We haven't gotten 100%.
They have not indicated any flexibility, but I will discuss that
well,
further
that came
with them.
up. And then the other point that came up was Elizabeth Warren implored, in addition to that Inflation Reduction Act money, there's apparently other federal money that has been set aside, and if I remember right, I forget if it was 200 million, 400 million nationwide, specifically designed to help fund grant writing to go after the, individual. And her view was, I want to make sure Massachusetts gets its fair share of the $392 billion climate action bill funding. And so when we start talking about going after grant funds, I think that's headed in a good direction. It sounded to me at the MMA annual meeting that the wind is blowing in a positive direction for those. The federal winds are blowing in a positive direction for those who would like to tap federal funds to get the kind of funding you're talking about here. So it feels like the flow is going with you on this one.
I thought I heard that it was the ARPA funds that could be used for hiring grant writers.
I could be wrong. I think that Elizabeth Warren mentioned yet another funding source coming out of the federal government that was specifically designed to help that.
Yeah, we were certainly told to use federal monies to
Yeah.
hire grant writers.
Yeah. And then, if I'm stealing your thunder, Hilly, stop me, but your third item here is to fund a dual facility sustainability position in FY24. To Pete's point about hiring a sustainability coordinator, as I recall, Christine's comments at our last meeting are what prompted you to word this in the way that appears to be consistent with what Christine is talking about, but that might make you feel a little better about not exactly being shot down quite the way it probably sounded like we were shooting you down on hiring some. That's how that specific action kind of evolved in last week's meeting, so.
No, that's fine. If we're going to get a facilities sustainability position, I thought we were adding a sustainability position on top of the facilities position, but
So I think we're in sync. Go ahead, Hilly.
Yeah, so two comments on that. So one is that, I agree with the grant writing. I think there should be somebody focusing on, grant writing or finding somebody who can grant write for us. And specifically related to that position, I heard from other towns who have gotten grants to initially fund that position for the first year. So that, that initial burden is reduced. And, I agree with you. Christine proposed that dual function, and, my understanding is that it will transition into more sustainability as time goes on, and or a separate position or something like that. So, we can talk about how that would work. But I think the understanding is that there'll be more and more. I can only make a pitch for you and the administration to move as fast as possible, because that money is being shelled out, and people are getting hired, people are writing grants, people are getting money for all sorts of things, and we need to get our act together.
Lots of people already have the e-school buses.
Well, I'm not sure how they're doing it. There's a lot of details to get worked out on that. If they're doing it now.
They've gotten it through federal funding.
Well, yeah, I don't think we just spend federal money without thinking through what our strategies are. And if they've already got it, I don't know how they've gotten it.
That's also why I talked last time about this multi-town strategy planning to think about ways that can be done. And I think most of the towns in Massachusetts that I have seen who've gotten grants are environmental justice communities. But that doesn't mean that dozens of other communities like Newton and Needham and Acton Boxborough have also applied for dozens and dozens of buses in that first round, and they're on waiting lists. But I think we will hopefully figure this out somehow.
Yeah. Hilly, this is related to your goals here, especially around the initiative side of things. And I'm putting an idea out both to you. I'd like your reaction, and also to Pete and Eileen. And this is sort of a follow-up on the conversations that you and I have had directly over the last, month or so, where I've been pushing for hard project plans, and you've been kind of declining to sign up for a hard project plan in the climate action plan. So I've been trying to listen to what you said, and recognize that it may not be something that's likely to show up in terms of the thing that I was looking for the overall plan. I also looked at, I think you'd sent an email to Christine around, various initiatives and some thoughts around what you'd like to see. It occurs to me that it might be worth us deliberately scheduling a Board of Selectmen meeting with some concentrated time with the Energy Committee. Doesn't have to be the entire Energy Committee, because that's big, but certainly you and some other key people from the Energy Committee. And in the absence of being able to come up with a complete detailed schedule and budget for everything that's in the climate action plan, what might be more important, more effective for us, would be for us to have a conversation about the specific things that the town really is looking at pursuing over, I'm going to say, the next 3 to 5 years. Because there's some things, like, I'll give you an example of one that immediately jumped out at me. I'm pretty sure that we would, if we got together and talked about something that we wanted to do here in town, we would get pretty rapid convergence that as soon as we are able to, we want to put a solar farm up on the capped landfill. So that's an initiative. It's going to take effort. It's going to take money to do it. We have other hurdles we're going to have to get through to make that happen. But I don't think there's a whole lot of debate in town about whether we should either leave the landfill alone or turn it into a dog park or not do anything with it, versus let's take advantage of that big wide open spot that isn't really good for much of anything else and put a bunch of solar panels on it. There are some other things, I think in the email that you had sent, you talked about things like boilers and chillers and other stuff like that, that HVAC systems that I suspect, while we might not know for sure what the timing of those things would be, when I say us, not because it's unknowable, just that we haven't thought about it. But I'm guessing that there's a lot of agreement that those would also be things that we definitely want to do. So what I'm trying to build is the list of initiatives that we are seriously thinking about trying to do over, I'll say, the next 3 to 5 years that we do need concrete plans for. When we talk about e-buses, I'm not at all convinced that we're there yet as far as a strategy for the town. So that's something that falls into a gray area, and I don't say that to take it off the list. I'm saying that's a place where I think the kind of conversation I'm talking about needs to take place so that we all get calibrated at how far along we are in getting to a decision one way or the other, and what we see as the real issues. And I'm guessing that there's some other, part of what I'm trying to do here, Hilly, is to not have the list of initiatives become a completely unconstrained, ever-expanding set of things that we need to do in some relatively short time frame that just kind of keep showing up. I'm trying to bound our aspirations, and it's, I don't know, for me it's like a it's not more than a 5-year time frame that I'm trying to get us out on, but that then starts to feed into things like capital budget planning and stuff like that. So I partly am asking you if you think that would be a worthwhile thing for us to plan to do at some point in the foreseeable future with the Energy Committee deliberately to have that kind of a conversation. But I'm also throwing this out to Eileen and Pete because they haven't heard the idea from me.
I think it's a great idea.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and you, I mean, might want to invite the people from the Capital Budget Committee as well, because clearly that's the funding moving down the road toward this. I mean, ideally, we'd have that 20-year capital plan, but that's, I guess, not going to be ready for a while. We're just in the process of hiring the consultant.
Well, we have a 20-year municipal building stabilization fund plan. So there is a 20-year capital plan for the buildings. Now we're doing an update to that plan because many of the buildings were not included in that when it was done about 10 years ago.
So the plan you're talking about is the one that McCarty did?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's, that one needs to get updated, yeah.
But the part I care about.
That's sort of a roadmap of.
Well, it is for the big 20-year picture, but what I'm suggesting is that for our purposes right now, trying to decide what we're going to do next year, the 5-year, the next 5 years of that capital plan is probably pretty well buttoned down. And I think we could have a constructive and specific discussion about what gets populated in that 5-year window, even if we, don't have the full. I know we want to get to the 20-year for the buildings, but even if we don't have that, we can talk about the things that you're either in or out over the next 5 years, and that buys us some time to figure out the other stuff. And because Hilly, I actually don't really want to be in a point where every time you bring an idea up, I'm sitting there asking for specifics on stuff, and I realize I'm pushing back, but I really do want specifics, but it's the specifics probably in the next 5 years that I want, not for all eternity.
So, let me respond to that. I am really excited about this idea because we have we have been trying to get some items into the long-term budget process because we can see them coming up as, like you were saying, boiler replacements and things like that. And part of the issue is that, when I bring them up as an energy committee, this is really something that sustainability coordinator would do, to look at the projects and bring them internally up and say, this is what we need to address, and not as necessarily as a climate issue, but as a replacement that makes sense with current technology and current rebates and incentives. So what we have been, you may remember in December when we presented our sort of thinking about budget, is that we would like to see an engineering and design study on the items that are on the capital plan 2 to 3 years ahead of them being listed for repair, replacement, whatever it is, so that we have some data to go on about the cost and about the possibilities of what could replace the old system. And we have, we sort of, I think at the time you agreed that that made a lot of sense. And I also would like to point out the things that we are working on or presenting to you are either things that are currently needing to be replaced or in the very near future, or in terms of, for example, solar projects that are readily available and could be installed quickly. We're very much having our eye on the landfill, but as Christine can attest to, we have no idea when that might happen, and things like that we just can't spend time on right now. I mean, we could ask for an engineering study, but I don't even know whether that would be still valid for, in 5 years or however long that project remediation takes. So that, makes much more sense to bring it up again when the time is ready with the, technological and economic conditions at the time. But I see your point. I think part of this sort of us presenting something and it seems like out of the blue to you, there's a lot of work to be done to mutually understand where we come from and, how we make these decisions, basically mostly on what I just told you, because, the projects are ready to be repaired, replaced, built. There is funding available or a good time, for example, the solar. We're trying to get in as much as possible right now to get maximum smart funding, as well as make use of the 30% IRA rebate. And in some cases, we need to get in before the interconnection builds up. That's the capacity in a particular circuit to accept solar. And in some of our properties, we're going to run up against that. The next step then would be to spend $80,000 on upgrading the capacity, getting a new interconnection capacity. That would be then on top of that new solar project. So there's, we think about those issues, and I really would like that meeting to sort of talk you through our different projects, especially as Pete said, together with the capital planning and the long-term building stabilization fund, and look at those projects and see what kind of initial engineering design studies we would schedule when, and based on the recommendations there, how much it would be. Today, I think we just heard that I think Memorial has one of the projects that are coming up, and Rise Engineering and Eversource just agreed to advance the engineering studies and price estimates there. So, some of these things we can't say right now how much it's going to be, because, we need to hire somebody to do that engineering study. But I would be very happy to plan things out.
So Hilly, quick reaction on things like the engineering study. I don't think are going to be items that belong in the capital budget. That would be a study that would be focused on developing the project that would get to the capital budget. So when we do meet, I'd like to better understand, and I understand this might even sound dumb, but we've done some things in the past that didn't require multi-tens of thousands of dollars of engineering studies to figure out how to do them. Some of the things that I think we'll have agreement on are similar to that. And I'm thinking about boiler replacements, HVAC replacements. We didn't need engineering studies to figure out the right answer, but we did make good decisions. So there may be some things that we should undertake that do require that upfront, and you just gave me yet another out when you said it. In some cases, it might be that the engineering companies and the utilities will have an incentive, and they'll pay for the study. So, that's yet another way. However, having said all that, I'm open to the argument that there is a need for us to figure out how to fund studies that we want to carry out in order to make sure that whatever we're doing on an initiative we undertake is conceived in the best way possible, to get the best, the best result. So I understand the issue. I don't think it gets solved inside the capital budget, but I recognize we need to talk about that. I just don't know exactly what the answer is yet.
Can we schedule that?
I'm sorry, Christine.
I was gonna say, I'd like to schedule it for February 7th.
February 7th, does that work, Tilly?
That's the next meeting, right?
Yes, it is.
Sure, or would you like to have a workshop with the Energy Committee at some other time?
I think if we're
Let's answer that
talking about
question.
advancing these projects for the fiscal year '24 budget, we need to be doing them
Yeah.
sooner rather than later. The warrant is gonna go to print in March.
So with Eileen and Pete's concurrence here, what I'd suggest, Hilly, is that we have this meeting, because we're kind of trying to get our act together about getting ready for FY '24. In that conversation, if we come out of that, where we kind of conclude a general workshop to address, a broader, maybe a little farther ranging set of topics, makes sense. I'm certainly wide open for a workshop. And one thing that's nice about a workshop, I mean, at that point, I would almost encourage, more so than how much we encourage people to come to our Board of Selectmen meetings because they're so entertaining. A workshop that we'd almost encourage the members of the public to come,
Yeah.
either contribute or at the very least listen. And so I'd be open to that, but we could cross that bridge
So I think
after the February 7th conversation.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, if we're talking about fiscal year '24 projects, they have to be discussed on the 7th in terms of the timeline. If you want to have a
Okay.
conversation the 5 years out, but municipal building stabilization and capital fund are going to want to hear about those sooner
Would
rather
that
than
be-
later.
Okay, would that be reasonable, Hilly? Our goal,
Absolutely, I think that sounds like that shortens the list for us too, for
Okay.
'24. And then, I think the other one, a workshop would sound much better because that we can invite, as you said, people from the capital planning side and get more understanding of how things work,
okay,
what the thinking is.
yeah, let's plan on that.
All right,
Very good.
great. And so I have one last little thing at the bottom, Frank.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And that was the wildlife management. This was just a sort of general goal of raising awareness of native pests and diseases that are seriously threatening our natural environment. I have listed, for example, the crazy worms and the spotted lanternfly, but there's many of them, and even just reporting them or being aware to not move soil or plants or something around, I think that might be a worthwhile goal. And I don't know, that could be perhaps farmed out to, we could get like Mass Extension Service to supply us with some leaflets or some videos to put on the website or something like that.
I know we focus on the town departments to do things. You've added a couple of items that I almost wonder whether it's not the garden club that we should be reaching out to for help. When it comes to some of this about knowledge of plants, we don't really have a lot about animals here, but plants, bugs, and things like that. I keep finding my head going to saying, boy, I think the people that I hear that seem to know about some of this stuff and can talk about it pretty well tend to be associated with the garden club or something like that. So maybe that's a direction for us to go on that one too.
Or we could have, invite somebody from the Mass Extension Service.
Mhm.
I put in crazy worms. I don't know if you're aware, but they, it's a non-native earthworm from Korea and Japan, and it's devastating our natural forest because it not only reduces the leaf litter very quickly, but it seems to damage seedlings. So there are places in New York where there's no undergrowth left and there's no new trees coming up. And there's really nothing we can do about this at this point, but it's really something to be aware of. We do have it in the area already. You may find it in your garden, but it's just something to watch out for in our natural environment too, and pay attention to whether our forests are rejuvenating.
What do they look like?
Well, they look like earthworms. They're a little thicker. And now you have to go to the Mass Extension Service. They have videos about how to distinguish them.
Okay.
But one thing is when you hold them, they're really like crazy. They wiggle much faster than our normal earthworms. And
I was thinking maybe they were cross-eyed or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably something we have to live with, but it's
Okay.
worthwhile people paying attention to, and knowing about, I think. And of course, the spotted lanternfly, when that arrives here, I think that's just months or years away now. That's going to be a major harm too.
Okay, well, Hilly, thanks for all your inputs, and I think our conversation basically kept them all, so I'll incorporate those in to our next edition of this. And I have your email, just hadn't read it yet, so I'll be able to do that pretty much straightforward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Hilly.
Yeah, good conversation. All right. Let's see, next item is board and committee appointments. The first one is a vote to appoint Doug Lawrence as an associate member of the planning board. The planning board unanimously appointed Doug at their meeting on January 9th.
Excellent.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second one is a vote to appoint Kate Pittman to the Dog Control Bylaw Committee.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a vote to appoint Eric J. Lavin to the Affordable Housing Trust. I'll make the observation that some of his background had me saying, I think we should have added him to the State Hospital Development Committee.
Thought the same thing.
That's okay, they got him, so,
So moved.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So Kate is the last addition now to the Dog Control Bylaw Committee. Is that a safe, that puts us at, what, 5 or 6 now?
Yes, I meant to look right before the meeting started. You actually had space for 11.
Oh, do we?
You did, but we have not exactly had anybody beating down the doors to be on the committee, so I think they should get started the way they are
So if
now.
that's the case, then I will work with Brittany tomorrow to set up a
Yep.
meeting next week, because I know we have to do the 48 hours notice, all of that, so I'll do that so we can have the meeting next week. Okay.
Perfect.
Very good. Next item is the FY 2023 Financial Policy Compliance Review.
Yes, and you should have a copy of it in front of you. Actually, Frank, if you could bring that up on the screen. As part of the financial policy, when we updated it the last go-around, the Board of Selectmen are now required to review and vote to certify that the prior year fiscal budget has met the town's financial policies. And the date set to do that is once we have, obviously, the tax recap is completed and free cash has been certified by the state, which was just done about 2 weeks ago. So at the 2022 annual town meeting, we presented an estimate of our fiscal year 23 compliance, and that is based on our estimated general fund expenditures and our total reserve balances. And I'm happy to report that we estimated a fiscal year 23 compliance of 8.9%, and as of today, we are approved at 8.7%. And then our free cash number, we estimated to be at 2.56, and unfortunately, we are 2.55. It's very frustrating. But I really want to thank the financial team. Putting together these estimates for the warrant and for town meeting require an incredible amount of work, so it's, we're very pleased to
On
see
that
they
free
come in.
cash, Christine, so the percentage change has to do with the total expenditures.
The general fund expenditures.
We were down to the dollar on free cash? Your number, your
Yeah, so we-
estimate is 1.729299 million,
Yes.
and the approved is the exact same number.
Exact same number. We knew exactly what had been certified by the state and what we used at town meeting, so, yep. That's been our number one question all day, so
Okay,
I've
okay.
become a pro at answering it.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm looking for a vote from the Board of Selectmen to vote to approve that the fiscal year 23 budget has met the fiscal policy. And then the second part of that new compliance measure is that this will be printed in the annual meeting warrant, in the town warrant, as well as our fiscal year 24 estimated budget as well.
So let me ask you one question before
Sure.
we do that. The free cash balance is not the first line on free cash, there's no difference.
Correct.
The last line on free cash, the reason that went down was because the higher expenditures left the requirement higher.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
never mind. Answered my own question.
Yep.
Great. So you just need a motion that we accept this?
You accept that we've met
We
the
have
measure
met.
of compliance.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Chris, you said that we had seen this? I hadn't seen that. How did you distribute it?
No, I just gave it to you this
Just gave
evening.
it to us tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Oh, it never reached me. Okay.
No,
You didn't reach out
Nope.
for it.
we were still putting the final touches on it this morning in terms of formatting.
Is this mine too, guys?
That one is yours too. Yep, and this one will be yours. That's one I got, but I gave it to you because you're the one who has to do it.
Blowing my nose and no one needs
Thank
to
you.
do it.
Yeah, Pete, before we move on, is there any, so that's the sheet over there. You're okay on?
Yeah,
thing
no,
you
I
just
was
wrote.
reading what Frank had on the screen,
Okay.
so I'm fine with it.
Okay, great. Next, vote to allow the chair to sign the contract in order to receive the public safety funds earmarks to the town of Medfield in the chapter 126 of the Acts of 2022, line item 8000-0213. And that is a total of $75,000 in funding, $50,000 expended to the town of Medfield to purchase and install wired automated external defibrillators in town parks, and $25,000 expended for the town of Medfield for wired AEDs at the 3 sports fields in town.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is vote to allow the chair to sign the town vendor and payroll warrants and to name a backup member to sign if the chair is unable to. By way of, I think you both remember this, but if anybody's listening, we normally are expected to sign, the vendor warrant is the list of all the things that the town paid or otherwise wire transferred, and basically those vendor warrants, which are oftentimes rather thick sheets of paper, have to be signed by, right now, have to be signed by the 3 selectmen. We have historically signed those at the end of our meetings every 2 weeks. The auditors have dinged us for taking so long to sign the vendor warrants because we're not
Correct.
doing it on a weekly basis. So for a while there, we've all been receiving electronic warrants at one point in time, and then that sort of discontinued a little bit.
Yes.
The auditors still are dinging us for not doing this on a weekly basis. So what this is all about is basically suggesting that the 3 of us vote to allow the chair alone to sign the vendor warrants. And then in the event that the chair is not available to sign those on a weekly basis, that there be a designated alternate. And so we have specific wording for the motion, which the clerk has in his hands, to put the motion on the table. And fortunately, the number 3
I
member of
move,
the board has the simple job of seconding it.
That's okay.
I move that the chair of the Board of Selectmen, if he, she is unavailable,
Unavailable or unable.
Put an "or" in front of all that, it's gonna work. Or if he, she is unavailable.
I move that the chair of the Board of Selectmen and/or
I would
if,
say it should be customary as it should.
No, because then we have to do it every year. Why aren't we doing it by position?
We're going to designate the chair and then designate the clerk as the
Yeah,
backup.
we'll have to do it again at the end of March to put in new names. Is there, I mean, if there's is there a reason?
I
why?
haven't looked at the statute to know specifically what the requirement is,
Okay.
whether it's by position.
Then could I suggest we do it by position now, because it makes it a permanent, but Mark, if you find that we've passed a flawed motion, then we'll just revote it again. Is that fair? Okay, thank you.
I move that the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and if he, she is unavailable or unable, the clerk of the Board of Selectmen, in his, her stead, be designated to approve all bills, drafts, orders, and payrolls not otherwise presented for approval at a posted meeting to the full board. Provided, however, that if such bills, drafts, orders, and payrolls are approved by the chair of the Board of Selectmen or the clerk of the Board of Selectmen, each shall make available to the board at the first meeting following such action a record of such action, and further to ask the chair of the Board of Selectmen to include on the notice of each meeting of the board an item for such purposes.
We will do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a second,
Do I read the whole thing, or
if you'd like.
what if I don't like?
You can just second it, you don't have to read
Yeah,
it.
okay, I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's exactly as worded. All right.
Trying to save every minute here.
Next, so our next item is to vote to close the annual town meeting warrant, but as the two of you are aware, we have two citizen petitions.
Three. A third one came in this evening.
A third one
Do I
came
have
in
the
this
third
evening.
one?
You should be on your new list. I just gave everybody a list tonight.
I see Jeff, I see Mark.
Yeah, I see two.
Where's the
And you
third?
got one at the last meeting.
Yeah, so that one's already,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
one,
yeah, oh,
that one
okay,
is
all right.
already,
Yeah,
that
there's
one
three
is already
total.
on.
Yes.
Is that already on this list, or do you
Correct.
have to add it?
Yeah,
Nope,
okay.
already on the list.
So in addition
Got
to
it, got it,
one
got
that
it,
we got prior to this,
You received
which
two
is
today.
already on the list.
Yeah.
So these are
We
the
have
two,
two
that'll be
more.
considered two new ones. Okay.
Yeah, one
Got it.
regarding, it's titled Compensation Transparency. The second being creation of Groundwater Protection Committee. And both of these are citizen petitions that have the necessary 10.
Yes, they have all been
Signatures, so
certified by
they are
they've all been
properly
certified by the
submitted.
town clerk.
So effectively, these are citizen petitions that are submitted in accordance with the provisions by which citizens can submit petitions for inclusion on the town meeting warrant. I have, one of them I hadn't seen until I got here tonight, so I don't even know what this one says. The other one, I think, Mark, you'll find is probably not sufficiently clear, and I'm guessing probably this one. So what we're doing tonight is simply adding these petitions to the list of articles. That doesn't mean that these cannot be worded to become legally adequate with the council of, our town council, on what needs to be there in order to make it a proper article for vote.
Meeting set up for next week to,
Yes, Brittany already set up meetings for it.
Okay.
Yep.
So understanding these two get added to the list, are we prepared to
close the town meeting warrant?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the town meeting warrant is now closed. These two petition articles to be added to the list.
Be online tomorrow morning.
Okay. Next item, vote to have the chair sign a letter of support for the Cultural Alliance of Medfield's application to MAPC's Technical Assistance Program for feasibility study on phase two for new construction of a visual and culinary arts building. This is for those who are regular viewers of our Board of Selectmen meeting. You'll recall that 2 weeks ago, we deferred on approving this, and the reason was that we are in the middle of a likely or pending sales transaction to Trinity of the state hospital property that's been the subject that you're all familiar with to support the redevelopment renovation of the state hospital. This request was to support a study that would be looking into the suitability, feasibility of putting up this visual and culinary arts center on property that will ultimately become Trinity's. We elected to defer getting in the middle of a discussion between CAM and Trinity about the use of the property that Trinity is looking at buying from us, because we didn't want to get into influencing a bilateral conversation between CAM and Trinity, unless Trinity expressed to us that they wanted us to support this. Trinity has expressed to us by an email from Abby that they do in fact endorse this request and want us to support it. After our last meeting 2 weeks ago, the very next day, the State Hospital Development Committee had its meeting. I brought the issue up to the Development Committee as well. The view of the members of the Development Committee was that they viewed this request for this study to simply fit into the broader context of the due diligence that gets done on a project before it actually gets undertaken. So the Development Committee had no objections to it and just saw it as more of the due diligence. So at this point, at least speaking personally, any of the reservations I had 2 weeks ago have been addressed. I don't know if either of you have any comment?
Nope,
Anything to
as long
add?
as you're good with that, I am good with that.
I'll entertain a motion.
So I'm fine with it as well. I actually met with Jean because I didn't know where it was all going, and Jean explained to me where it was all going. I told her I didn't like the place it was going, that she planned on it going, but we're not citing it here, we're just citing the concept, and I like the concept, and we can figure out later where it's gonna go. So I'm in favor of it, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, citizen comment? Whoops, sorry, Mark.
I had an opportunity to view the statute, and it talks repeatedly about member, individual member. I think the intent is that it be an individual identified by name. And then it would simply be something, when you reorganize annually, you just do that as part of your reorganization.
Is this the thing we just voted about, who's signing the
It also
warrant?
makes clear that that member has to certify that they've done what they're supposed to do to the remaining members. It's all set up in a way that seems to require an individual person.
Well, it only needs to be certified by placing it on the agenda with the name of the action
Can you
taken.
send me the citation, because that, as a chair, as a member of the Board of Selectmen.
Chapter 41 of section 56, which is right at the top of your
So that,
model motion.
you've got the, so it's chapter 41, because I just see that as being an administrative pain in the butt, when in fact the policy would be the chair signs, the clerk signs the second. That makes not a lot of sense to me to have to do that. Partly because undoubtedly we'll forget to have to do it.
I actually like the fact that you're calling out it's the chair, because it should be the chair signing it, if anyone's gonna sign it.
Right.
And then
But-
the default is second, I get that.
But what Mark is saying is that the wording, and I respect Mark's interpretation here, I just would like to read it. He's saying when it calls a member, if I heard you right, because it's indicating that a member of the Board of Selectmen should sign it, he's saying that suggests it's a named member as opposed to a named position. That would somehow or other we can't do it that way.
I mean, I recall, and I believe this was part of municipal reform.
Correct.
And I remember the discussion, DOR put this forward as part of a laundry list to make things easier, but it was make it easy, but not all that easy. That's just the way they do things, so.
I've sent the statutory, the late teacher mailboxes. So
Will you do it? Okay, okay. I'd just like to read it, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to do it that way, because you have to keep redoing it. We'll have to redo it again in 3 months. Just,
So are we doing something, or are we?
well, I'm gonna suggest we could probably get through a week.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks. Let's bring this back up on the February 7th if we
That's
need to
fine.
revote it to
An alternative, if the auditors are pushing this, find out if they're agreeable to you just
Yeah.
designating a position as opposed to individual.
Could we?
They told us to seek legal counsel, so. I'm just,
You got any lawyers I can talk to that can give you the answer I'm looking for, Mark?
Because that's the problem. You do it one way and you're told a year later it was not done correctly.
I'd almost rather do that and have a policy that's clear, that sustains itself, than to be told a year later, oh, you didn't
forgot to
remember
do it, or you have
put
the
this
wrong
vote
name.
on the
Yeah.
first meeting in April. In fact, it probably has to be before the first meeting in April, because we won't be meeting until the second week of April, and there'll be a whole week that will be in violation. And we can't allow ourselves to be administratively out of
Just put it
it.
on your list
Yeah.
for reorganization, which is,
Do we have a list for?
We do.
We do. I've been winging it all these years.
we just live to make you guys look good.
I always have to go back to the meeting minutes
Look,
on
look at
how
Frank's
Mike
even bringing Frank up to speed
Marcucci
here.
was the master at transferring responsibility after the election. I always have to go back and go, now, who was it that made the motion and who seconded the motion? And then it's the outgoing guy immediately makes the motion to get the heck out of the job. Okay, citizen comment? Is there any?
I have nothing tonight.
No citizen comment. We have a consent agenda, 2 items, a request to hold the annual Run Like a Maverick 5K on Sunday, May 7th, 2023. The race will begin and end at Montrose School. And the second is a request from Doug Pollard to set up Pollard's Texas Q at the Medfield State Hospital grounds from April 4th through June 10th. Now,
We're going to hold on that.
hold, okay.
Doug is actually, he called me, he's on a plane coming back from Nashville tonight, and he'd like to be here to talk to you about this in person.
Okay. Because I thought as it was worded here, it was inadequate, because we don't, it usually, I think, Saturdays, but this sounds like he's got a 7-day-a-week operation here.
Yes, he would like to come in and talk to you about
Okay.
more of what he's looking to do. And I do have, I apologize, we had a very last minute one come in this evening from Zulo Gallery, who's looking for a series of their first Thursday events. And we have plenty of time to put the others on, but they do have an event planned for February 2nd, and you're not planning on meeting before that.
And that's a 1-day.
Just a
beer-
1-day.
Beer and wine
wine.
license, so.
Yep. So I told Bill, we just had some communication about it today, so.
So what occurred to me when I saw Doug Pollard's request here was whether we should be charging him for it.
Well, sure.
So, I mean, we don't give away town property for nothing usually, so he's had it for nothing, but.
Didn't he,
Well,
did we charge him last year?
so last year he ended up not doing it. He'd come in to discuss setting it up with you, and we talked about setting up a fee. Doug and I talked a couple of times back and forth, and then he had made a commitment somewhere else, so he decided not to go to the state hospital.
Okay.
You did waive any consideration of any fees during COVID. That's when he first went up there to do that, so.
Yeah, to Pete's point, that's done. So now
Yep.
we're in a more normal circumstance, so I would say that could be on. So the short answer, though, last year, we didn't chase him off with our fee, we just. he had
No,
some-
we never even settled on a fee for it.
So that might be something that he should be prepared to discuss when he does come in.
So let me ask a question on that, because, so I know that I saw various barbecue places up at the CAM events. Is that a separate,
Separate. This is set up on the south side of the
your
property.
first drive-in? Okay.
Yep, not on the campus
On
side,
the other side
on
of
the
the
other
street?
side.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay, so there's 2 items. The first one is the Run Like a Maverick 5K. Second one is the Zulo Gallery request for a 1-day beer and wine license for the first Thursday event on February 2nd.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries for those 2 requests. All right. Next, meeting minutes, November 1st, 2022.
I did not get all the way through it.
Okay.
I read through the minutes, but I always go through the Zoom, and there were some things that I want to double check.
Okay, so let's defer that. For those, if you read the Google Doc, for some reason, Google Doc has identified me as anonymous.
Anonymous, I figured it
I'm
was
not
you.
trying to, I'm sure what it is
You didn't sign
that
You don't
I
have a Medfield account?
I have 2 or 3 different accounts, because I periodically get a notice that some account hasn't been used in a long time. And it's like, the whole reason I have those accounts is I don't really want Google to know more about my life than I myself know by combining my business and personal all into this well-integrated account. So because I have multiple accounts, they are completely screwed up. That's without even getting into Microsoft's accounts that somehow or another have to be logged into Microsoft Online in order to get my Office software. So, well, so far I'm winning. It's just that, because nothing's broken down, but it's like I have no clue what they want me to do. But one of the subtle signals they send me is they make me anonymous when which is probably
That's when you
good.
know you're not signed in. That's,
It's probably good from the standpoint of,
Class of Citizens Anonymous. It's
yeah,
like a
yeah.
movement.
Yeah, right. So anyway, just so you'll know, those are my comments were primarily editorial, and anything that was more than merely editing was nuanced kind of additions.
I got in and corrected Lauren Beetlebacher's last name. If you saw how they spelled it, it was Beetlebacher.
Beetle backer. Well, maybe she backs the Beatles.
And
No.
I was like, I give the person credit for like not knowing exactly how to spell a name. I was like, okay, well then,
I hope
we'll catch
Lauren's
that.
not listening here tonight. Okay. So we'll defer that. Next item, I think, is, yes, it is, town administrator updates.
I just have a few tonight. I'm hosting town administrator office hours at the library tomorrow from 10:30 to noon. It was great to see everybody at the MMA. Receiving the Kenneth Pickering Award for innovation was definitely a highlight of the whole evening, so that was fantastic. And just thank you to all the staff who came out for the day, both to support us on the award and to attend the seminars. It was fantastic to see that many people there, so that was great. And that's all I have tonight.
Very good. Next meeting dates are February 7th and February 21st, 2 weeks later. Selectmen reports.
Alrighty, so I will say going to the MMA conference for the first time and attending the first-time attendees portion of it was nice. It's, it's funny, sitting there in the beginning, you don't know all the ladies across the front, and actually gentlemen, ladies. But then you go to the next thing where they had the governor and the mayor and the woman who's now the new MMA president was at the attendees. And then Molly from Westwood was there. So it was a nice group of people in the panel for first-time attendees. I found that it was nice to listen to the mayor speak, to the governor speak, and then I went to the women's luncheon and the lieutenant governor spoke, which I thought was fantastic. And then I happened to sit in the EV presentation. I found something interesting, and we have access to the files. We can download them, right? Because I thought for Hilly, the DPW gentleman from Concord gave a good overview on the expenditures that they've made in Concord. And then the other two gentlemen that presented, their decks are in that portal as well. And then I thought the private versus public road was wildly entertaining and educational at the same time.
Wildly entertaining was
because
Brutus from Franklin was there. Brutus from Franklin.
He was, so this gentleman who lives in Millis, but he's the DPW director for Franklin, had a ton of insight. Like, we experienced this at for the Deerfield discussion, right? Well, we are by no means the only town that has these challenges with roads being built 30 years ago, things not being filed correctly.
70 or 80 roads in Franklin.
All cul-de-sacs. He gave us the whole cul-de-sac story. So it was just wildly educational and entertaining at the same time. But it opens your eyes that we all have the same problems. It's just a matter of to what magnitude. And then I already brought up the crosswalk sign scenario that I really appreciate the chief jumping on and making it safer driving down 109 for those people, or people walking, I should say, across 109, Robert Sproul. And other than that, I think that's all I have.
Pete?
So I thoroughly enjoyed the MMA 2 days that you and I went, Gus. It's a combination of inspiration, I think, especially from the senators and the mayor and the keynote speakers, but also you get some really hard information, which is really helpful. The Pickard Award, I would just follow up on what Chris said, was for the Medfield State Hospital development that the town of Medfield did. And we were one of 3 groups recognized by the MMA for innovation, basically, is what the Pickard Award, as I understand it, is for. I went to the programs on cybersecurity, and the key takeaway there is have a plan, know what you're going to do when it hits the fan. I went to transportation funding, and one of the takeaways from that was that the IRA is actually just a regular funding bill, but it's bigger this year. And so that a lot of it is and the number that I focused on was 30%. I thought it was a lot bigger than 30%, bigger than a usual one, but that's what I think I heard. I went to a program at one of the ones that they had in the main vendor area on undergrounding utilities. Weston's experience was that they redid a mile of the Boston Post Road through downtown Weston. They paid for it all themselves. It was $19 million for the whole mile, but that included the sidewalks and the roads. The undergrounding of the utilities part was $4 million, which they said they paid for themselves. They didn't put it onto the electric bills like you're allowed to do. And then I had a couple of conversations with vendors. A lot of them are state agencies. So I spoke to a woman about from the Mass Housing Partnership, Chris somebody or other, who knew Sarah Raposa and talked about her dealings with Sarah and the fact that, because I was suggesting to her that this MBTA community housing zoning requirement that they're pushing our way is kind of difficult for a town like Medfield to comply with. And she encouraged me, she told me she'd been talking to Sarah about it, and she encouraged us to find different ways of meeting the 50-acre requirement other than just the state hospital. But the Energy Committee met since we were last together. The highlights from that are that the PPA, at the solar at the DPW, I guess, is supposed to go online this month or next month, so that's good. Penny Connor said that we got some sort of extension, and we will not lose our place in line and the money that flows from that. The buildings pillar said that I think the Green Communities Act deadline is February 3, and I don't think that we've completed our prior projects, so we're not allowed to, unless you've finished your projects.
We're almost there. We're almost done.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to be applying. Oh, are we?
Yeah. We're going to meet the February 3rd deadline.
And we have grants going in?
I have to check with Susan on the grant.
Yeah, she'll send the next round in, but the first round, you can't even begin to submit unless you finish by February 3rd, and we're on track to complete.
You have to finish the things that they've given you money before you
Yeah,
can
that's the
apply for
initial
new
check,
ones,
and
so-
we're going to finish that.
All right, I understood that we were going to miss that deadline, but that's great to hear. And then the last thing that I just would share is that somebody mentioned that Northampton requires sustainability as a consideration for any capital item. I looked, and they actually have a very interesting sustainability report from Northampton, so let's see, what else? Medfield Foundation Legacy Fund met. The Legacy Fund was very successful last year, so that's good. If you want to contribute to the endowment of your town for the things that are sort of the extras in town, please contribute to the Legacy Fund. The Medfield Foundation Governance Committee met, and I was part of that. And then, as I said, I met with Jean about her project up at the additional project up at the hospital, and that's it.
In my case, the day after our last meeting was the State Hospital Development Committee's quarterly Zoom meeting, and this was primarily a discussion of the Trinity project and where they're coming in. And Jean's CAM letter of support was also, but we've already talked about that. The main points that I come away with in terms of where Trinity's at right now, they're using this year to get their act together, figure out what they need to do to develop their plans. I am very mindful of the gun range issue. These in many ways, Trinity is carrying the water to try to drive to a resolution. But as a member of this board in town, I haven't lost sight of the fact that the gun range issue for them in their proposal was a showstopper. And so even though they're the ones that are taking the lead in these conversations, I don't think we can afford to lose sight of the importance of making sure our legislative delegation is on top of this and is going to help us do whatever needs to be done to get that result. The gun range is a state-owned facility, so this is not a question of the Medfield needing to do something. This is state property, and it's a police training range, so obviously the police have to make sure that they have the ability to train somewhere in the state. And we don't have the position that they have to leave that gun range, but they do have to sort of redesign it to where it meets it addresses the acoustic concerns that Trinity has. The second item that is easily on my radar screen is the issue that Trinity's going after MassWorks funding. There are significant infrastructure work that has to be done up at the state hospital site. The numbers that they're looking for are big numbers, but then this is a big project, and this is delivering a pretty hefty number of housing units, which is the new incoming governor's #1 priority. So I would expect that should weigh into the state's thinking, but again, I think we and our legislative delegation needs to be absolutely sensitive to what those needs are and prepared to do what we can to support Trinity's efforts to get that money.
Can I make a quick comment on
Sure.
that? Because you made me think of that. So I got a letter in the mail 2 days ago from Denise Garlick saying she's hosting her kind of update to Medfield on February 7th, which is the night we're having a selectmen's meeting. But should somebody be there from whether it's Medfield State Hospital Development Group, or to make sure she is aware that, that we are where we are and any additional help?
Yeah, she's aware of it for sure. Unfortunately, she scheduled the meeting on our night. It would have been, otherwise we would be there.
Yeah.
There's usually a good turnout, so I mean, I can suggest to Todd that somebody from the committee.
Bill,
be
you gonna
there.
be torn that night, or you gonna?
No, I'll go there when it's over, I'll come back, I'll come here.
Okay.
So-
Wait, you don't think we'll be done?
No, my energy committee's coming with me for a while.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt, but-
So anyway, that's one. Other items that they're dealing with, just so you know, that are not, those two are the big blips on my radar screen. And Bill could even add to this, but the parking lot that's planned near the water tower, they are reaching out to the neighborhood to
Okay.
make sure that their plans for what they want to do with that parking lot at least take the concerns of the local neighbors into account.
We have a Zoom meeting on the 30th.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
good.
good. There's a range of viewpoints, the most extreme of which is make the parking lot go away, which I think is not quite probably going to be the reasonable solution, but
No, when I
that they're working
solicited
it.
them too, by the way, I pointed out that it was in the master plan, it was in the zoning. and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
else. I mean,
Yeah.
not to say don't make your objections if you have
Right.
an objection, but at least I pointed out that
Right.
it wasn't something that just all of a sudden popped up.
Yeah, it didn't sneak
Right.
in, that was very
Right.
clear. I've got a video of that I showed, like, just, that's a pretty vast area, so.
And then the last point that came up there that I think we've all are aware of, because we've been getting invitations to the meetings from Sarah Rabosa, but the Trinity is submitting the site plan to the planning board. There are at least 3 meetings that are taking place with Trinity and the planning board to work their way through that comprehensive site plan, which they have a lot that goes into that, so.
Okay.
Those are the main items that were there for that. Yes, the MMA annual meeting was, once again, it's nice to have it be in person. Well worth the time. There were certain parts of it that the things I went to were a little on the dry side. The legal update was sort of dry. I think there was a personnel thing update that was dry. And the things that I thought were going to be the least interesting proved to be the most interesting. So the Selectmen's meeting that took a look on Saturday morning at the recent court cases around municipalities flying flags. This is the thing that came out of the city of Boston, basically being petitioned by a Christian group that wanted to fly a Christian flag because Boston had flown other flags. That was actually a very interesting discussion to include a question or a comment that came from someone at the end from, I think it was Wellesley, that was talking about their lampposts that have little arms that they can run banners down, which you would normally not think a whole lot. I think maybe, I'm not sure if Millis has it, but basically, I came out of that discussion saying that our policy of not allowing town property to be used for any political statements, no matter how worthy they are, it's a tighter restriction than what you absolutely have to abide by. But it's actually, for its simplicity, it's kind of, we stumbled into a pretty good policy that, we could always have a discussion about loosening it up, but right now I feel pretty good about right where it's at. The other humorous thing about that is apparently, and this thing I think got to the Supreme Court, and one of the arguments that was made was that the city of Boston had flown the Montreal Canadiens flag. And they basically were saying, well, if you're gonna allow the Montreal Canadiens flag to be flown, what are you talking about, that there should be restrictions? And it turned out that that was a bet between the mayor of Boston and the mayor of Montreal at the beginning of the Stanley Cup playoffs that agreed that the losing side would fly the flag of the winning team over their state house or their city hall. So the courts ruled that that was in fact government speech. And it was kind of funny.
So Gus, when I heard that, my reaction was that, because I don't think we do have a written policy on that.
We do.
We do?
On the flags?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yes,
No,
we have a
do
written
know,
policy.
Yeah, we do.
On things on town land?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think we had a written policy.
Those of us in the inside track Boston had allowed hundreds of requests to fly flags. It never said no to anybody before this. So this was just a foregone conclusion.
The thing that struck me as I listened to this discussion they had, they were talking about how the government also has First Amendment free speech rights. And that's fine, except, and they were talking about how mayors, or in our case, the Board of Selectmen, could make a determination of what would be flown, be flown as the speech of the government. And I think that's a pit, because the question is, so let's go with the mayor of Boston. If Mayor Wu authorizes a flag to be flown that reflects Mayor Wu's political views of what's acceptable, according to the court case, that's legal. But I personally think that's totally inappropriate. And there's almost nothing, when it comes to any political issues, there's almost no political issue that an executive of a municipality or town could be confident that 100% of the people in that town endorse the view that the government is promoting. Where this came up for me years ago was Mayor Curtatone in Somerville, when basically he declared that Sam Adams beer will not be bought by Somerville because the owner of Sam Adams beer supported Donald Trump. Well, I don't care about the fact he doesn't like Donald Trump, but you're using your office to promote a political view, however close to a majority it might be. You're basically advancing one political view, and unless you're sure 100% of the people in Somerville hated Donald Trump, you were taking advantage of your office. So I think it's just a pit. It's best to stay clear of that stuff. We've done that, but it was a more interesting discussion. I thought.
Fundamentally, government speech is an evolving doctrine. There hasn't been a definitive case on it. It was frankly something that Justice Scalia actually initiated. So it had very conservative legal background used to justify something in a particular case. As he didn't have a majority with him at that time, it's been used, the most solid use has been to restrict access to towns' websites by others.
Okay. Well, anyway, I found it an interesting discussion. I went to several different places. I have some materials, Chris. There was one. I go to the booth with the guy that's sitting there and nobody's talking to. So I walked up to this one guy, and his organization provides 401 like employee contributory programs.
The 403B.
It wasn't a 403B. It was a 401K. I've got the materials. I'll show you. And I don't think we do it, except that I anticipate that with inflation and competition for labor, we will be, over the coming 2 or 3 years, looking harder at what we need to do to make sure that working here is attractive to our employees. And I just thought this was something I don't think we had that I thought was interesting. It was a supplemental thing, supplement to pensions, so it wasn't like a complete replacement. It was just, I thought that was interesting. Nobody was talking to him, so I stopped to see. I said, what do you do?
What was he giving away?
Well, I didn't want to carry a lot of stuff around. So I got the paperwork, but I didn't actually go all the way through. Two of the things that I did go to, and community choice aggregation, again, something I didn't think I was going to learn anything. And in fact, I did learn some important things. So we have the community choice aggregation effort here in town. We have the plan submitted for DPU approval, so we're like one step away from being able to roll this plan out. DPU is running right now at 24 months to review plans, and they're trying to fix it because it used to be 3 months. But the way that electricity rates are right now, maybe that's not the end of the world, because it's not necessarily the best time in the world to be launching a community choice aggregation plan because the rates really stink. So that was interesting. I asked, at the end, I did ask the guy who was the main guy for the event. Right now, Massachusetts requires our electricity to be 59.2% renewable. I didn't know that number, and that number keeps going up. So we're trying to create a community choice aggregation program that has more renewable than what the state requires, But over time, as the state keeps moving up closer and closer to 100% renewable, the relevance of community choice aggregation as a solar renewable energy promotion goes away, or it gets eclipsed. But the person from Melrose talked and said the main thing that the members of that program like is price stability and the fact that they can trust people. So the idea of this possibly being a program that gives us pricing leverage, if we have enough people, it may still have a life beyond what I think we all envisioned it would be. So that was interesting. And then the last thing, I went to the booth with the MBTA advisory board because I've been getting emails on the advisory board for at least a year now telling me about meetings that I didn't go to. And at first I confused them with the Norfolk County Advisory Board, didn't realize there was 2 advisory boards. And then I realized it was, but I was asking why should I bother going to meetings? We don't have any mass transit or anything like that. So I went to see these folks who also didn't have anybody talking to them at the time, and apologized for not doing anything. And they're really nice people, and they want me six meetings a year. They just want me to do something. So that is it. And
So
this is the first entire year here. She walked out on me, but we are ready to adjourn.
So the fantastic spot that Eileen found may not have been the best spot. She's blocking a delivery truck.
Oh, okay.
So she
I thought Chief Garrett was towing her.
That would be the next step.
All right. It's so good to make sure we have yet another entertaining Board of Selectmen meeting.
Friendly advice, if you go to that MBTA advisory board
Yep.
meeting, don't mention Mike Sullivan's name.
Don't, okay. Well, I won't do that. They said it's all Zoom, 6-7 meetings a year, not more than an hour each, so I promised them I would do my best to start to
You
participate.
go in and just blast them.
They didn't mention that to me, but maybe that's why they were so glad to see me. I don't know, because they were very complimentary. Okay, that is it. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is now closed. Now that it's closed, I'm going to ask